Have you ever felt like you're meant for something more, but you're stuck in the same cycle? You're not sure how to break free. Or maybe you've hit a plateau in your career, or you're wondering if the path you're on is even the right one. If you've ever felt the pull towards something bigger, but you didn't know where to start, this conversation is for you. You're listening to the Mind Over Finger podcast, and this is episode 215. So I hope you're doing amazingly well as you tune into this episode today. I am beyond excited to bring you a conversation that's going to inspire and challenge the way you think about your career, your goals, and what's truly possible for you. My guest is the incredible Kate Kayaian. In addition to being a good friend of mine, Kate is a career and mindset coach for artists and creatives. She runs her signature group program, the Creatives Leadership Academy, and she maintains a busy one-on-one client roster. Kate started her podcast, Tales from the Lane, I highly recommend it, in 2023 as a career and lifestyle focused resource that is geared towards creative and entrepreneurs. Beyond Potential, which is what we're talking about today, is her first full-length book. She's a former professional cellist who attended the prestigious New England Conservatory of Music and then went on to have a thriving career performing with several Grammy Award-winning groups and touring as a solo and chamber musician. When the pandemic hit in early 2020, she pivoted to the online space and she has never looked back. She lives on the beautiful island of Bermuda with her husband and their puppy, and she spends her days working with clients, writing, gardening, and serving on several nonprofit boards. And she believes that everyone has the right to live exactly the kind of life they've always dreamed of living. So, as I've said, Beyond Potential is her brand new book that is now available for pre-order. And let me tell you, this is a must read for any musician or creative who's ever wondered, am I really living the life I want? In our conversation, we dive into the powerful themes of her book. We talk about how to reassess your path, how to redefine success on your own terms, how to reignite your passion for your craft. And Kate shares her own story of stepping away from the traditional classical music path to building a career and life that really align with her deepest values. So, if you've ever felt stuck or uncertain or held back by old stories about what you should be doing, this conversation is for you. Kate is full of wisdom, and I know you're going to walk away with a fresh perspective and actionable steps to start designing the artistic life you truly want. So, without further ado, here's my conversation with Kate Kayaian. Let's go to the show. Kate Kayaian, I am so excited to have you on the podcast again.
Again, always so good to be here with you, Renee.
Yes. Kate, you were with us in episode 134, and I'm so excited that you're coming back because you're one of my favorite people. And you have written a fantastic book, and I've been lucky enough to have a glimpse at it early. And I have to share it here on the podcast because I've loved everything that you've put out there for so long. You have an amazing podcast, a great blog, and just all around, you're such a fantastic creator. And I want to talk about this book with you today.
Oh my gosh, you're making me blush. Really. Thank you. That's so nice. And I am really excited to talk about the book. Really excited.
Yes, you're going to tell us about all of the places where we can get it at the end of the episode. And
Absolutely.
if that works with you, I'm going to put on my glasses and I will read the description. Is that okay with you?
Yeah,
Yes.
absolutely.
First of all, I love the title, Beyond Potential. So, Beyond Potential is a transformative guide for successful mid-career artists, musicians, and creatives who find themselves asking, is this all there is? Written for those who have spent their lives following their ambitious dreams, but now feel a longing for something more, This book offers a path to reconnect with the truest version of yourself. Through exercises, thought provoking insights, and self reflection, you'll explore what truly matters, unearth a sense of purpose, and move beyond the limiting definitions of success that may no longer serve you. Imagine meeting the ideal version of yourself, the person who lived your truest life. Beyond Potential helps you bridge the gap between your current reality and that extraordinary, authentic self, guiding you to live a life of fulfillment and meaningful achievement. Embrace the journey toward the creative life you were meant to live. I mean, who does not need this? I can already feel that this is going to resonate with so many people because, as opposed to what I think we were brought up to believe as kids, that you pick one thing and that's what you do, I think
Yep.
life is very different. And a lot of people are not made aware of that fact and stay stuck in a path that maybe they're no longer vibing with.
Mhm.
And I think when we are exposed to that knowledge and give ourselves that opportunity to explore what else is there, so many amazing things happen. So I feel like this book is needed, and your writing is so incredible. I've enjoyed reading it so much. So please tell us everything about it. How did that come about? Why did you write this book?
Yeah, I think you're right. I think that it is needed. I hope it's needed. That's my sense. You hear about that study that was done, right? They're not really a study, but the hospice nurse that
Hmm.
went and talked to all of these dying patients at their bedside, and asked them about their regrets. And the number one regret that they had was that they lived their life according to other people's wishes, that they didn't really live their own life. And I think that for musicians and creatives of all kind, but particularly musicians, so many of us start at such a young age that it's not necessarily that we're living the life according to what some random person wanted us to be doing, but often we're living the life that our 10-year-old wanted, our 15-year-old wanted, our 20-year-old wanted. And we get so hooked on that dream and that goal and we pursue it. And then all of a sudden later in life, we're like, wait a minute, that was great, but it doesn't quite fit now. And I don't know what to do about it.
Right.
So, and sometimes it is a lot of external voices and, the fears of, I mean, I can tell you when I stopped performing as a cellist professionally, when I made that decision and made that announcement publicly, that was after a lot of time working through what will people think, what will people say, et cetera, et cetera. And the number one comment I got from people was, wow, can I do that too? Like, are
Hmm.
we actually allowed to just stop because we want to do something else? And so I think a lot of people are living their creative careers based on, or continuing their creative careers based on what they think they're supposed to be doing.
Right. It's
Yeah.
this is the path I'm on.
Yeah. And when I was going through that transition, I went through a couple of pivots in my career, both from going from like a full-time freelancer playing with all of these orchestras based primarily in Boston to wanting to branch out and do more chamber music and solo recitals and concertos. That was a big pivot, right? You're not supposed to do that. If you're a freelancer, you're just supposed to stay in your city and play your gigs and be happy. So I had to go through that. There were no resources. There was
Mm.
nothing online. There were no stories. There were no examples of people who had made such a pivot. And that was really hard for me to just sort of say, like, well, I'm going to do it. I mean, I'm sure I wasn't the first person to do something like that, but there was nothing that I could read or look into or hear. And same thing when I went online, when I started coaching, when I started writing, and when I started moving away from performing as a cellist. Again, there were no big examples of that out there. There were no books about it. People weren't sharing those stories, and I just felt like this is a really important story to tell.
Yeah.
And I felt like we needed a way to sort through this stuff. So the book is really just my journey. I mean, it's not about me; it's about the reader. but it's sharing the exercises, sharing the work that I went through myself and the work that I go through with my clients to help them do similar things.
Mm. Yeah, I love that. And I love how your experience is empowering you to give to your clients what you didn't have when you were looking for these resources.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, my clients are creatives of all kinds, a lot of musicians, of course, who, and this is a big part of it. Like the book is not like, okay, you're a musician and you want to quit. Here's how. This book is really, okay, you're a musician. Maybe you love your career and you don't want to stop doing what you're doing, but maybe you want to add something new and you're not sure how. Maybe you're like,
Right.
well, I want to start a big competition in my town, or I want to get a tenured professorship at a conservatory, or I want to start a festival. Um, and that's like my clients, some of them are pivoting from one career to another, and a lot of them are creating projects, programs, educational events like that. So yeah, this
Ah,
work
that's
helps
fantastic.
all.
In the book, you talk about the this re aspect, this
Mhm.
renewal, reassessing. Talk to us a little bit about that angle of the book.
Yes. So the subtitle is a guide for creatives who want to reassess, redefine, and reignite their careers. And I separate the prefix, right? So reassess has no hyphen, but I put one in because, again, creatives in general, but especially musicians, we have done a lot of work to assess our careers and our lives, right? We've been doing it since we were little kids.
Yes,
Do we want
every
to
minute.
Right, every minute. So, right, this is not the first time that you are assessing your life. This is not the first time you're defining who you are as a creative or as a musician. And it's not the first time that you have ignited yourself, right? Like we've been doing that since we were 4 years old,
Yeah.
right? And so this book is really about like, okay, you're a successful mid-career artist. Let's take a beat. Let's like take a step back and reassess from where we are right now, not where we were 10, 20 years ago, but where we are right now. We're going to reassess where things stand, redefine who we want to be and where we want to go with the rest of our careers, and reignite all of it because a lot of people have goals and dreams, right? So many people that I talk to, you've probably experienced this as well. Like they book a discovery call, they know exactly what they want to do
Yeah.
and they've wanted to do it for a really long time. And they're reaching out because they haven't been able to get themselves to do it. They haven't made any progress, right? They've been wanting to start that chamber music festival for 20
Yeah.
years, right?
Yeah.
And so the reignite part, the third part of this book, is really tactical advice and tips and breaking everything down of like how to actually follow through on these goals and dreams that you've set out for yourself in part two, um, and make it happen. Make it happen.
I love that. I was sharing with you before we started recording how I love the arc of the book because I really feel like it takes us from where we are and we end with a clear path on how to move forward towards where we want to be. And I love these exercises that you have. In chapter 2, you have an exercise on how to reassess your old stories, and that's so important. You just sort of mentioned it briefly just now, but can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Sure, the old stories that you have been carrying around with you, that could be like in my case, the old story of if you're a freelancer, you cannot just start playing concertos and solo recitals and chamber music, like stay in your lane, right? That's a story I used to tell myself. And this can even be down to like the basics of your everyday. I give an example in the book of a story, how old stories can tie themselves to our habits, right? Of like, I
Yeah.
used to drink gallons of coffee every day because I was getting up at 5 o'clock in the morning to practice, working all day, and then having a concert at night, driving home, getting home at midnight, and starting again, right? I like basically existed on no sleep and purely ran on coffee as fuel. Not the healthiest thing, but it was what it was. And I just had this story in my head that I need a lot of coffee. And I realized that even like recently, I was still drinking a full pot of coffee every day, even though my life, I mean, I do a lot of stuff, but it's not the same schedule. I don't need that much coffee, right? So old stories that we are carrying through in our head that can be you're not supposed to take an audition after a certain age, right? Um, it can be I'm not good at contemporary music, or I'm not good at Baroque music, or I'm not good at sight reading, or anything, stories that you, if you dig deep, and that's what these exercises are meant to help you do, you'll find that it stems from like one chamber music rehearsal you had when you were 8, right? When your coach just flippantly said some made some comment about your sight reading abilities. And here you are with this story that you're not a good sight reader. So these things can so easily get embedded into our brains and affect every decision we make.
Yeah.
And so in that first part, the reassessment part, really taking you through different avenues of looking at those old stories, the old stories that were given to you by your parents and people around you and teachers, the old stories that you absorbed from people around you, and the stories that you've kind of put on yourself.
Yeah. It's such a powerful concept because that really resonates with the framework that I use in my coaching work. A lot of
Mhm.
it is based on the self coaching model, where we think like the thoughts create the feelings generate the actions, and then actions create results. And in my work, stories and thoughts are interchangeable. And so, based on the stories that we have, we feel a certain way and we make decisions.
Yeah.
And as we live with our decisions, sometimes we feel as we have to keep living with those decisions and we keep the same stories. So I
Hmm.
think that reassessing is so important, because when we understand that sometimes the stories we have are not quite the reality, or at least not the current reality, maybe it was the past reality, maybe it's not the current reality, and that when we choose to reassess, reevaluate, and we start to tell ourselves a different story, then we can start to make different decisions. We don't have to stay on that path. We don't have to adhere to the decisions we made in the past.
Yeah.
And not that nothing was wrong with the decisions we made, but if it was today, would we make these decisions again? And how do we go about making conscious decisions based on stories that reflect who we are more?
Yeah. And you don't have to change the behavior if you don't want to, right?
Yeah.
I could have looked at that coffee situation and sort of laughed and said, gosh, I really do not need to be drinking that much coffee anymore. I can stay awake without it now.
Yeah.
But you know what? I really love coffee and I'm going to keep drinking it, right?
Yeah.
But that's a conscious decision, but you've separated the story from the habit at that
Yes.
point. You've
Yes.
separated the story from the habit.
Like
And
my
I think,
coach would say, you have to love the reasons
yeah,
for making the decision.
yeah, absolutely. Oh, that's a great one. I'm going to steal that one. But no, and in fact, I named Brooke Castillo's, the self-coaching model, and Katie Byron Katie's The Work is another great model to help
Yeah.
break through these old stories that we've been carrying around with us. And you know what? Even if you don't know immediately what it leads to, right? If you're like, oh gosh, maybe I'm not a bad sight reader, and you start to see evidence that you are in fact a perfectly fine, maybe even a good sight reader.
Hmm.
Maybe you're like, okay, well, I don't know what that means. You can just ask yourself the question, what could it mean for me? What
Right.
could it mean for your future? What would you do now that you were holding yourself back from before? And that might seem like a silly example, but like you'll find examples in all aspects of your life. What would it mean if you let go of that old story?
Yeah. Is it good if I share one of my stories?
I would love that.
I've shared that story here on the podcast before, but in case someone hasn't heard it, um, one of the old stories that I had was that I'm bad at theory.
Mm.
And that always prevented me from applying to do a doctorate.
Mm.
And one day, I cannot tell you what it was. One day, I doubted that story. It's whatever was happening in my life. And I remember the moment. And I was in my parents' basement in my childhood bedroom. And I was
Mhm.
practicing. I was preparing for a concerto appearance with orchestra. And like, I remember exactly the page I was looking at when this thought came in my head. But what if I could figure it out?
Ah,
And
yeah.
from that, things changed completely. That I would say that really pivoted my story, to borrow your words. And now I have a doctorate, and it came from that, from
That moment.
or reframing
Mhm.
that story or
I
reassessing.
love that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that's a perfect example because you just in that moment without even realizing that you were reassessing that old story, you reassessed that old story and came to a different conclusion and you let go of it. You were like, okay, well, if I'm not bad at theory, if I could, like maybe I'm bad at theory right now, but what if I could figure it out? If I was not doomed to be bad at theory my whole life, what would that allow me to do in the future?
Yes. Yeah. I love
Yeah.
that. It's like Byron Katie says, who am I when I believe that? And who would I be without that story? Yeah.
Exactly. Very, yeah, exactly.
And then sometimes people are not quite sure how to go about things. And you have a great exercise for that. So they they're not sure how to, like, they can't figure out what they want to do. Tell us about this. What can we do?
Yeah, well, it goes along with the idea that Martha Beck talks about in her book, The Way of Integrity, of the path of not here, right?
Mm,
Which is not her philosophy. She's borrowed it herself, but she talked about it publicly recently, so I'll give her credit. But it's, just it's a combination of figuring out what's one thing that you do know you want.
mm,
Right. So it's say like, well, I've been playing in this orchestra for 30 years and I'm just kind of done. I feel like I've put in my time and I'd love to do something different, but I don't know what. I always ask the question, what do you know? And they say, well, I know that I would love to play more chamber music. I'd love to, even if it's not that, even if it's like, I'd love to be able to do all of my rehearsing work at home. Okay. Well, what would that look like? That would be like you could do some solo performances and just practice at home. You could play some chamber music and invite colleagues over to rehearse at your home. And so let's say you're like, okay, let's go for chamber music, and you put together a concert and you have friends come over and you rehearse, and it's kind of a pain in the butt and you don't really love it for whatever reason. That wasn't it. It was the path of not here. Well, now you know you've
mm.
eliminated one major avenue, right? So now you can say, okay, what was so frustrating to have to coordinate schedules with everybody, and it was a piano trio, so we had to find a venue with a piano, and so maybe I just want to do solo violin recitals. Okay, so you find a venue, it doesn't have a piano and it doesn't matter, it's solo violin, and you put a program together of your favorite pieces, and you perform it, and you're like, and the concert goes really well, it's a huge success, but you're like, you know what, I just feel like I've played those pieces so many times throughout my life, and it would be so fun to introduce something new. So not there.
Yeah.
But like I loved the ease of doing solo recitals. I loved the ease of finding venues. I loved the one-on-one aspect with the audience, that I could talk directly to them. And so, what if I commissioned some new pieces from composers that I love and perform those? And you do that, and you're like, ah, yes, that's it, right? So, by just figuring out that one piece that, you just wanted to rehearse at home.
Yeah.
That's all you knew. And then you try something that allows you to do that, and maybe that's not it. Don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. Keep with what you did know you wanted and try something else that fits into that. And eventually
Mm.
you'll get there, sooner rather than later, usually.
That's so simply put, but powerfully put. I love that. Yeah.
Oh, thank you. The other side of the coin that people struggle with sometimes with this is they say, well, I know I want to do this, but I like, to what extent? And sometimes they start like jumping the gun. They'll be like, I want to play more. Um, I want to be more of a soloist. I want to play some concertos. I love that repertoire. But you know what, Kate, I just the idea of being on the road and flying to Asia every other week and performing in a different concerto and a different hall with a different orchestra every week, like that's just I don't know if I want that. I'm like, whoa, 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 like tell your dream agent, your pretend agent to slow the roll a little bit. Like let's start slowly. And so I call like, and then what is the exercise? So, okay, well, you want to play a concerto. Okay, so let's say you found an orchestra, or you made up an orchestra of your friends and you did a little performance and you played that concerto. You're like, yeah, yeah, okay. And then that's fun. And I say, and then what? Okay, well, maybe there's like a regional orchestra in town that would be interested in having me come and play. And so you do that. So bigger audience, bigger orchestra, maybe you even get paid this time. Okay, great. And then what? Okay, well, I think I would like to maybe get an agent, get under management and work with somebody to do like, maybe one concerto every couple of months, maybe one a month, maybe smaller orchestras. Okay, great. And then what? And they might be like, you know what? I'd be really happy with that.
Mm.
I'd be really happy with that. I'd be really happy to play like one concerto every couple of months with an orchestra, a mid-sized orchestra in the US or in the country that I live in. I'm not traveling too far away from my family. I'm not away from my family for, too much of the year. That's about perfect, right? So you
Mm.
just slowly inch your way up bit by bit, and you will find that stopping point. Now, that person might get to that point where they're playing a concerto every month with an orchestra and it's great. And they might get to that point and their kids have all graduated from college and they have a little bit more free time and maybe their partner can travel with them more easily now. And they say, okay, great, let's up the ante. Maybe they want to go bigger at that point. That's fine. But I think people get intimidated
Yeah.
if they fast forward all the way to the end. It's
Mm.
like if you wanted to start a garden and you're like, gosh, I don't know if I can handle being a full-time farmer. It's like, dude, just plant a bean. Like it's
Yeah.
okay. Plant some,
Yes.
start
I
there.
love this. It's so great. It's such a great way to approach it. And I feel like it allows one to once again get away from these parameters that exist and these preconceived notions we have about this is what a life as a soloist is, this is what a life as an orchestra player is, this is what a life as a freelancer is. We have these preconceived notions of how things are done, and we forget that we have some agency over that. And what I love about this exercise is it allows you to find that stopping point where you're creating your unique path outside of
Mhm.
these rigid parameters that sometimes,
Yes.
it's another story basically that
Yes.
we create for ourselves that is an impediment to exploring what could be. And
Yes.
so that allows us to see
Right.
what could be. I love that.
Yeah, Renee, you just like, yes, that you just define the whole point, right? Is to be completely in alignment with yourself and what you yourself wants to do, right? I mean, at the heart of whole book, and I will say like one of the starting point of this whole idea for a book actually happened way back. I think it was like 2017. It was ages ago. And I was just at home and I was listening to a podcast. And what's frustrating to me now is I cannot remember exactly which podcast it was and I cannot find it. I've like, I've narrowed it down to like five and I've gone through the entire archives of them all. I can't find this episode. But in it, somebody was saying that, like, oh yeah, it's like that story that you go to heaven and instead of meeting, St. Peter at the pearly gates, you meet the version of yourself that actually did everything you
Mm.
wanted to do. And that stopped me in my tracks, Renee. I was like, oh my God. If I met that person right now, I'd be so jealous. And
Right.
I'd be so mad that I hadn't started doing the things that I know. We all know deep down what we want to do. If you're not entirely sure, if you're not convinced, the exercises in this book are designed to bring you that clarity,
Mm.
right? By the time you have finished part one and part two, you are ready to dive in and start becoming that version of yourself.
And that's what you call meeting the potential self, right? Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, meeting your beyond potential self. So the whole title, Beyond Potential, is like it's beyond that outdated version of
Mm.
potential that we put on ourselves or that other people put on us growing up. Like, oh, Renee Paul, she's so talented. She's got so much potential. She's going to be this amazing dot 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 X, and they define you. They tell you when you're a young kid what your potential is, right? And
Yes.
we start to follow that. Or we know, oh, we're so talented, we're winning competitions, we're going to these festivals, or not,
Right.
right? I mean, we
Yep.
both have clients and members of our audience who weren't the people winning competitions and weren't the people getting scholarships to festivals and therefore couldn't maybe go. They weren't getting into top conservatories, and they ended up with a story for themselves that they did not have the potential to be a musician, right? And
Yeah.
this book is about going beyond that definition of your potential that was put on you earlier and deciding what you want it to be for yourself and going after it.
Mm,
And
I love that. And what you
yeah.
just said made me think of something I've been thinking about for a while is I think they should teach every teenager about the sunk cost fallacy
Mm-hmm.
because I think that so many of us can get caught in that where you don't want to reassess and reevaluate and dream about something different because you have sunk so much money in that education and so much effort
Yeah.
in getting where you are that if you look for something else it means that that was all a waste of time and a waste of money when there could be nothing further from the truth because all that money all that effort made you who you are today and you are the person who can create that next version of you.
Yeah, absolutely. And parallel to that, the idea of disappointing other people
Mm,
because of all the time and effort you put into it, right?
yeah. Yeah.
I mean, I was terrified when I was leaving cello. I mean, I'm all have always been a really independent person, and but my father had passed away already, but my parents were so incredibly supportive of me. Obviously, like they bought me a nice instrument, really sacrificed a lot so that I could do music. They could not afford to have a kid doing music at the level I was doing, and they somehow made it work. But I was often reminded of that,
Hmm.
right? Like any day that I wasn't practicing, if I didn't practice 2 days in a row, I would hear about all the sacrifices that they were making so that they could pay for those lessons. So I'd better start practicing. So I grew up with this, we have sacrificed so much so that you can do this thing, that when I, as an adult even was like, I don't want to do that thing anymore. I was really worried about them being upset, right? Like, what? We sacrificed our, for decades so you could do this and now you just quit. And I remember having the conversation with my mom, and she was like, "Oh, I don't care. Do what you want." I was like, "What?" Like, I just wanted you to practice. You just needed to practice. Whatever. Like it's what parents do. They sacrifice for their kids. That works.
And
So,
that illustrate the importance of reassessing old
yes.
stories to
Yes.
understand okay what was behind these words and
Mhm.
what is actually going on right now, where's the reality right now.
Yeah. Yeah. What would it mean? What would I be allowed to do if I knew she didn't care? I mean,
Right.
like I said, I was pretty independent to a fault. I was always going to do what I wanted to do, but I think a lot of people sort of get stuck in that
Yeah.
mentality. Mm.
Yes. 100%.
Yeah.
One of the things that I love about the book, other than your awesome writing, Kate knows I
Thank
love
you.
her writing, um, is that it offers a clear path to, if not finding answers, at least knowing how to go about finding answers and
Yes.
getting started on the journey. But I think that a lot of people will find answers. And you give so many great uh, strategies. And one of them is in chapter 10, and it's about how to set long and short term goals. And
Mm.
I'd love for you to tell us a little bit more about that. Just,
Yeah, yeah. Well, I think that it's just reverse engineering it sort of, in a at a big level. Let's say you've done this work, you've sort of met your beyond potential self and you have redefined who you want to be. So you have all of these things that you know you want to do in your life. It can be really intimidating to just be like, okay, so I'm a marathon runner now, huh? Like, when you've barely, taken a step out your door. Um, or, oh, okay, somehow I'm supposed to become fluent in Mandarin. All right. How do we do that? Right. So just what are thinking about some milestone goals? Like, what do you want to do? I mean, first of all, you have to decide why you want those things. And that's a whole chapter in the book
yeah.
too. But once you've gone through that, really breaking it down to some milestone goals, setting a roadmap, breaking it down into like a quarterly system, right? Over these next 3 months, what do I want to do towards that goal? And then breaking it down like, okay, of those 3 months, what do I want to do this month towards that goal? And really like break it down for yourself, put a number down. Um, if it's, oh, I want to have this concerto memorized, or I want to get ready for this big audition coming up, break it down of these 12 weeks. What do you want to have? Okay, I want to have all of the excerpts memorized. I want to have my concerto ready to go. Um, and I want to have played for 10 people. Okay, great. So this month, what do you want to do? This first month, okay, I want to like learn the excerpts, not they aren't polished, they aren't memorized, but I want to learn all of them. And I want to have gone through the whole concerto. I want to have had 3 lessons, let's say, on the repertoire. And then, okay, of that first month, like, what do you want to do this week? And
Mhm.
then what do you want to do today? So that each day you're really breaking it down and you know exactly what you're responsible for. It's like a training app for running or any sport, right? Anything you want to do. They should do that, right? They should make like audition training apps. Like
Now that you've said that, we know someone's coming up with it, right?
someone's coming up with a like play through Don Juan 10 times at various speeds, right? Then rest for 30 seconds and do it again.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah. So just when you break it down that way and all you're responsible for, you're not responsible for, becoming fluent in Mandarin today.
Yeah.
You're responsible for opening up that Duolingo app and working on it for 20 minutes today. That's it. That's it. And you know you can do that. And so step by step, you end up moving towards your goal. And I can't tell you how satisfying it is and how fulfilling it is, not just to reach your goal, but to know that you are actively moving towards it and pursuing it. Right? I
Yeah.
mean, it's whole like it's the journey, not the destination. Like, well, you're going to get to the destination. You're going to really enjoy being at the destination. But yeah, the journey is kind of fun too. And it does give you that sense of I've gotten back in the driver's seat of my own life. I am living
Mm,
my life. I'm living the life that I want to be living, not the life that was just set out for me by other people or by my younger self.
I love that.
Yeah,
Yes.
it's really powerful.
Speaking of your life, you're living my dream life with the ocean view every day.
I know. I know. I wish I could turn this around and show you the boats and the harbor. Yeah, I get to
Yeah.
live in Bermuda now. I'm living the dream.
The suburban Chicago views are not not quite living up to that for sure.
I had a good 18 years of suburban Chicago views. They were nice too. They were nice too. Yeah.
Yeah, Kate, this is so fantastic. As we wrap up, I want to make sure that we've tackled what you think was is the essential thing that the listeners would need to take away from this chat before they run and order the book. And we'll have the link, and you'll tell us all about this. But before we dive into the actionable tip, anything else you would like to add?
Just that I really think that this book is powerful and needed. I think I was telling you the other day when I was, reading through the galley copy, right? They send you a copy before it's actually published. And I wrote it in out of order, and I knew what the arc was. I knew what the order was going to be, but you end up working on this one, and then you work on this one, and then you edit this one, and it becomes really disjointed. And I sat down and, like, I love to read. And it was a very surreal experience to sit down with a book that was mine and read it from cover to cover. I was looking for typos, but I was still reading it cover to cover. And I came away and I was like, this is a powerful book for any creative. If you are at the top of your game, if you are like, I've got a great career and I love it, this book is for you. There is still more that you can do. These exercises are really going to help you pull every ounce of, like, living exactly the life you want to live and how you
Yes.
want to live it. And if you are struggling in any way, if you're like, things are pretty good, but I would love to do something, to add something in, or to do something a little different, shake things up a bit, but I'm not sure what, this book will help you. If you know
Mm,
exactly what you want to do and you haven't been able to do it, this book will help you. And if you are just starting out and you're still in that dream mode of, like, no, I know I want to be principal cellist of the New York Phil. That's it. That's all I want. That's my dream. I think you can still get a lot of this book. Because, yeah, go for it. Absolutely go for that dream. I'll be the first to shake your hand when you're there. But I think that for early stage professionals thinking about these things, what a what a gift to go through your career, to start your career letting go of those old stories, to start your career knowing that anything is possible and you can do anything that you want. And the
yeah.
more true to yourself and more in alignment with your unique skill sets you are, the happier and more fulfilled you will be. And usually financial reward comes along with that, but that's a whole other podcast episode.
As I'm hearing you speak right now, something really struck me. I think that I was telling you, I feel like the arc really works. And I realized it's not an arc. It really makes me think of the cycle of change in the way that Martha Beck presents it, where you live your life and then something happens that makes you maybe yearn for something different,
Mhm.
or makes you, if not, you have a certain discomfort with where you are.
Yeah.
And then as you move in this cycle, at first you have to find the vision. And
Mhm.
then once you have the vision, you have to start taking action. Like, what are the steps? And then as you take action, you create and you arrive to what she calls the promised land. But when you're in the promised land, right? If you arrive in the promised land, you still have to build your house, and if you have your house, you want to decorate it, and maybe once it's decorated, you want some books and you want a comfy chair to read your book in, and you want a table to put your coffee next to, you know what I mean? So once you arrive at the promised land, there are still things that you can aspire to,
Yeah.
and that promised land might launch you into the next cycle. But as you describe it right now, it looks like this book is a great companion,
Yeah.
whichever stage you're on in that cycle. And even if you are, as you said, very fulfilled in your career, maybe there are ways that you can make that career even more delicious, even more sparkling, even more fulfilling.
Yeah. And the decision, the original title was Creatives Who Want to Reassess, Redefine, and Reignite Their Careers and Their Lives. And it was sort of discussed and settled on, you should like take off lives, just make it about careers because it'll streamline the audience. But it really is, it's not just career stuff. It
Hmm.
is your whole life. It is the house and how you're decorating it and the garden that you want to plant. And I mean, I know that was a metaphor, but like, let's go with it, right? Um,
Because you know I'm not planting a garden.
you don't need to. I'll send you my vegetables. But, but like, okay, you're at the height of your career, but like, what are the things? And it goes back to if you were to meet that ideal version of yourself that did all of the things that you in your heart, you want to do. Some of those things you will never tell another soul, right? Some of them are highly personal, but you know
Yeah.
what they are. And so some of them, it might be career related. It might be a huge career shift. That's the easiest and most accessible thing to talk about, but it could be anything. It could be that ideal version of me has a really close relationship with my kids, and I don't
Mm.
feel like I do, right? And so, maybe that's something you want to work on. Or, that ideal version of me has a lot more fun.
Hmm.
She's really fun, and I don't think I'm that fun. Like, okay, you can work on that too. Like, so it's a way to look at your whole life, maybe in the context of your career, maybe not. But I just like if it helps a few people, I'm happy.
It will. Yes.
Yeah.
In
I
closing,
hope.
how about an actionable tip that the
Yeah,
listeners
sure.
could implement?
Actionable tip. Okay, something that everybody can take home and do today. It's a little bit of an attitude adjustment, right? And I've written about this and talked about this before, but it's moving from a no because attitude to a
Mm.
yes if attitude.
Ooh, I want
So
to hear all
I
about
want
this.
everybody, yeah, I want everybody at home to think of something that they would love to do, but they're like, we can't because, right? So that could be like, I'd love to take a 4-week vacation in Europe with my whole family. Can we do that? No, because I can't get the time off and we could never afford it. Okay, fine, fair. I want you to change that to, could we do that? Yes, if. And just see what comes up. Yes, if I took a sabbatical. Yes, if I arranged for personal leave or if I made specific arrangements for my job. Yes, if I quit my job, right? Like it can be anything. we're not signing you up to do any of these things yet, don't worry. But just what are the options? What's out there? What could you do that would allow this to happen? How could you afford it? Okay, we could afford it if we dipped into our retirement accounts. Okay, maybe you don't want to do that. Maybe you do. I'm not here to judge. We could do that if we sold our second car and just went down to one car. Okay, all right. Can you manage with that? We could do that if we like didn't go out to eat for the next 3 months. We just cooked at home, and if we like just trimmed the food budget at home, I think we could swing it. Oh, okay. Well, that's maybe easier. And you just start to, I mean, you're all creatives here, right? Like get creative with what would it take to make something like that happen. So
Mm.
that's everybody's homework. Think of something that you want to do, but you're like, nope, because of this. Very
Mm.
simple. Can't do it because of this. And I want you to put in the yes, I could do it if this.
Yeah,
It's
that's
not guaranteed
amazing.
it'll work, but it's a good attitude adjustment.
Yes.
It's a
Well, like I said
reframe.
earlier, one thought changed my life,
Mhm.
and this mindset can change your life
Yeah, so
if you're
that's a
implementing
perfect
it.
example. You said like, can I get a doctorate? No, because I'm bad at theory. Change to like, could I get a doctorate? Yes, if I worked on my theory.
Yes. Yep.
Done.
Totally. I
So
am
it's
the
a completely
embodiment of
different
that
thing.
concept.
You are exactly. I love it. I love it. That came from a colleague that I had in a nonprofit organization where he was kind of the one in charge of like, he was the deciding vote. And anytime anybody had an idea for something, he would just shoot it down. No, we don't have the staff for that. No, we don't have time in the schedule. No, we don't have the money for that. And nothing got done. The organization did not change at all during his entire tenure. And it's because he wasn't, like, yes, if we brought in 2 interns, yes, if the board increases my budget and I can hire somebody else, yes, if we take these two other things off the calendar this year and swap them out, right? Like, you've got to get creative about how could you make it work. You're not signing on to definitely doing it yet, but like just look at it a little bit differently.
Yes.
See where it gets you.
And it's like if you open the door a little bit for the possibility, even if you're not ready to fully enter the room, it's
Hmm.
there, it's open, and your brain is working, and eventually elements, thoughts, ideas could come together
Hmm.
to open it fully.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
I love that.
A whole new world out there.
That's right. That's right. Kate, this is amazing. Beyond potential. I hope that everyone jumps and jumps on any platform where they can get it. You're going to tell us where to go. If you want to hear Kate's previous appearance on the Mind Over Finger podcast, that's episode 134. Her website is katekayaian.com. She has a fabulous, fabulous podcast you all must subscribe to, Tales from the Lane. And did I forget anything?
Um, no, I just adore you so much. When I first started down this path of shifting and expanding my career, and I was looking for examples of musicians who were doing something interesting, I found you. And
Hmm.
I found this podcast and I listened to it. I listened to it every week. I went back and I was like, I have to know who this person is. She's amazing. And here we are. So
Isn't that
it's
amazing? Yes.
an honor to call you such a dear friend, and thank you for having me on, and thank you for reading my book and talking about it with me. And yeah, you can it is out. It's available for pre-orders. It officially comes out on March 25th, but it is available for pre-orders, which of course I think everybody knows by now those pre-orders help tremendously in letting booksellers and online retailers and Amazon's rankings know that
Yes.
it's going to be a popular book. So you can grab that at Amazon.com.
And
And
correct me if I'm wrong. Maybe I'm getting ahead of myself there, but I know you're working on some surprises for those pre-orders, correct?
yes, yes, I'm working on some surprises. And for people who want to be on my launch team, which, various things, but if you're interested in that, like if you want an advanced copy of the book to read and then like put a review on Goodreads or on Amazon and rate it, it's so helpful to an author in a new book. So if you want to do that, just reach out to me on my website and I'll hook you up with some fun bonuses and surprises for that. But
Mm.
if you just want to, if you're curious, grab a copy of the book, Beyond Potential, a guide for creatives who want to reassess, redefine, and reignite their careers. I love the cover. I had nothing to do with it, but I just love it. Um, oh, I had a little bit to do with it. And yeah, tell me what you think.
Yes, I fully endorse this book. And I'm just so, 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 first of all, grateful that you came in my life and to have you as a friend. And I'm so happy that we can share all of this great wisdom, insight, and really useful, these useful strategies with all of the listeners here on the podcast. Thanks,
Yeah,
Kate.
absolutely. Thank you. Bye, everybody.